Okay, now this is about George Washington Carver, the great scientist George Washington Carver, and this is a libation for him. George Washington Carver, libation for his soul. They say George Washington Carver was an African American scientist and educator. Carver is famous for many inventions, including a number of uses for the peanut. George Washington Carver, he was born January 1864, and he made his transition in January the 5th, 1943. George Washington Carver was born enslaved and went on to become one of the most prominent scientists and inventors of his time, as well as a teacher at the Tuskegee Institute. Carver devised over 100 products using one major peanut, including dyes, plastics, and gasoline. Early life. Carver was most likely born in 1864, enslaved in Diamond, Missouri during the Civil War years. Like many children of enslaved, the exact year and date of his birth are unknown. Carver was one of many children born to Mary and Gills, an enslaved couple owned by Moses Carver. A week after his birth, Carver was kidnapped along with his sister and mother from the Carver farm by raiders from the neighboring state of Arkansas. The three was later sold in Kentucky. Among them, only the infant Carver was located by an agent of Moses Carver and returned to Missouri. And that's a shame that they were actually kidnapped. Education. The conclusion of the Civil War in 1865 brought the end of slavery in Missouri. Moses and his wife Susan decided to keep Carver and his brother James at their home after that time, raising and educating the two boys. Susan Carver taught Carver to read and write, since no local school would accept black students at the time. The search for knowledge will remain a driving force for the rest of Carver's life. As a young man, he left the Carver home to travel to a school for black children 10 miles away. It was at this point that the boy who had always identified himself as Carver's George first came to be known as George Carver. Carver attended a series of schools before receiving his diploma at Minneapolis High School in Minneapolis, Kansas. Accepted to Highland College in Highland, Kansas, Carver was denied admittance once college administrators learned of his race. Instead of attending classes, he homesteaded a claim where he conducted biological experiments and compiled a geological collection. While interested in science, Carver was also interested in the arts. In 1890, he began studying art and music at Simpson College, Iowa, developing his painting and drawing skills through sketches of botanical examples. His obvious aptitude for drawing the natural world prompted teachers to suggest that Carver enroll in the botany program at the Iowa State Agricultural College. Carver moved to Ames and began his botanical studies the following year as the first black student at Iowa State. Carver excelled in his studies. Upon completion of his Bachelor of Science degree, Carver, Joseph Budd, and Louis Palmer persuaded him to on stay on stay on for a master's degree. His graduate study Okay, I got a lot of things going on now around me. But George Washington Carver, the great scientist, botanist, was a great artist also, musician. That's a little known about him. He was a great artist. If you see his work, you can see he was an excellent artist. Also a pianist. He played the piano and embroiderer, crochet. So he was talented at so many different things besides agriculture, where he was famous among whites and blacks. Otherwise, he was a genius.